Hey, what's up, guys? Note Investor here. So, has the slide downward finally ended? Are we finally seeing a little bit of a low, a little bit of a bottom? How are prices going to get to 15,000 by the end of June? I'm going to cover all of that. I will go into the charts and I will do a deep dive into Bitcoin and some of the prices I'm seeing. We're going to do both the long-term charts, kind of the broader view, as well as some near-term action to be watching. But first, let's take a quick look at the coin market cap. You can see prices have shown a little bit of green, finally, a little bit of green showing up on the board. We've had some names that are showing some big returns. EOS, Bitcoin Private, showing another one of those. There's a news behind that. Neo up 4%, and just, single digits across the board, nothing major, but so many of these names have been so oversold versus BTC, especially in a lot of ways. So we're seeing a little bit of a bounce, but is it the low? Is it a good intermediate low? That's kind of the question everyone's asking here. So we'll take a look at that. So looking at Bitcoin first and foremost, this is the daily chart, the broader kind of view on this. And, in line with the weekly chart, there is this tightening pattern, this symmetrical triangle that has been forming, and you can see that this most recent pullback basically took us right back, or almost exactly, to that low point on that bottom trend there around $7,200. So the line there exactly is around $7,150. The $7,200 that we saw hold lines up with this very small support area that we saw here. The prior support was around 7,400. We did undercut that briefly, and so far we've managed to close above it on a daily basis. And so in and around there, we're starting to see a little bit of support show up. The sellers are exhausting a little bit after a pretty good stretch, almost 3 weeks of correcting to the downside. The move on this from top to bottom down about 26%, so pretty substantial. And of course, as you guys all know, the alts have taken a pretty good hit relative to Bitcoin, so that's magnified the dollar valuation on the downside even more. So watching this big pattern kind of play out, it's showing up on the weekly chart as well. We've been seeing this on the weekly for some time, this very tightening pattern. This pullback on this weekly was a little deeper than most people had hoped for, but still, if it closes here, would still establish a higher low relative to the lows that we saw in April. And then the next test would be getting back above this trend line, which now puts us right around 9K on the way up, maybe a little bit higher depending on how quickly it gets there. But that's going to be the level to be watching on the way up in the broader, more intermediate term. Looking a little bit closer at the near term. So here's the 4-hour chart, and you can see that prices continue to struggle to get above this declining 10 EMA, but here at the lows, we're starting to see a little bit of a battle take place. I mean, it's a pause at least from this selling that we've seen here for a couple of days, and it was a pretty big move here relatively quickly. And so we're seeing some selling pressure show up, or some buying pressure show up here on the upside here. The volume was pretty big here at the low, so we're seeing a little bit of climactic action on the short term. RSI on the 4-hour hit some very oversold conditions, sub 20 RSI for a little bit, and then we had a second low yesterday. Now that was on some news and some of that factored in, but at the end of the day, it's the charts that paint the picture. It's the reaction to the news, and you can see we saw a little bit of a double bottom here, but you are seeing the divergence show up on the RSI, bullish divergence. And so that's good news. We made a new lower low. RSI did not make a lower low, and here we are trying to bounce again. And it's been really tight here. The last 3-4-hour bars have been closing in a very narrow range. I was seeing this as a double bottom pattern, but it is hitting resistance on this 10 EMA on the 4-hour. And I did post on Twitter earlier a chart pattern that I was watching. It's a rare pattern, you don't see it too often, but it was a diamond bottom reversal pattern, and that's what I was looking at here. And so just very quickly kind of drawing that, I was looking at this pattern potentially forming on this 1-hour 30-minute chart, and it is starting to edge out of that a little bit. The RSI divergence remains in place, and so something to be watching here. The volume signatures also line up with this pattern. Typically the volume makes a little bit of a dome shaped kind of pattern where the left side of the pattern is light volume, the middle has the highest volume, and then it cools off a little bit before breaking out. So that's what I'm going to be watching. But to be fair, that pattern can break out either way. But the fact that it's a diamond pattern, it is a bottoming reversal type of pattern. And so I'm going to be looking for some upside testing. But near term, we've got to close above this $7,700 mark. That's really been the area of resistance. And so if we can break above that, that's going to be a good sign, especially if some volume comes in. And then beyond that, 8K is really going to be the target that I'm watching. That was the key support level that broke down here recently. And so 8K is going to be the area to watch on a bounce if we continue higher. And that's going to be the good kind of first test to see if this is the low. So don't expect it to go all the way straight up there. That's not usually how prices work. They'll generally, you'll see a rally and then maybe a test to the downside again, establish a higher low hopefully, and then a retest of overhead resistance. And so that's what I'm going to be looking out for. But 15,000 Bitcoin, I'm sure you guys saw this. So John McAfee's at it again, and he posted a couple of days ago some short-term predictions, and there's some notable items in here, some geopolitical stuff. Japan in the US will be creating a gold-backed US currency. Interesting. And if that happens, I mean, the price of gold would just automatically shoot up because of the amount of dollars in circulation. So I don't expect that to happen. If it does, I do trade other markets and actually have a long-term call play going on gold right now. So, hey, that would work out pretty nicely. But looking at Bitcoin, that's the most important one. He said Bitcoin will surpass $15,000 in June. And keep in mind, he posted this on May 22nd. So he's basically saying we're going to see $15,000 Bitcoin in the next 4 weeks. That's a bold statement. That's a lot to ask for. I don't expect that to happen, not one bit. But hey, John McAfee, I am rooting for you. I sure would like to see your prediction come true this time. But I don't expect that to happen. There was some other names in here that he did mention. Bitcoin Private would surpass $200 by the end of July. And EOS would hit $32 by the end of July. And so going to the coin market cap, if you look at Bitcoin Private here, you can see that current pricing is $25, just a little bit over $25, sub $26. It's had a big bump here in the last couple of days. I think a lot of that is the news and kind of the hype behind that, but $200 by July, so $200 in the next 2 months. The current market cap is around 500 million, a little bit over. And so you look at current supply, if it goes to $200, then you're talking a $4 billion, just a little bit over $4 billion valuation on Bitcoin Private. So that's a tall task to ask for in the next 4 or 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks here. The next one was EOS, and EOS was pretty strong today here. And there's been a lot of news, a lot of events happening here, not just McAfee tweeting, but a lot of stuff going on, the network going live, the token swap. I mean, there's just a lot of activity here. So could we see EOS at $32 by July? That's not out of the realm of possibility. That certainly could happen. But again, look at the market cap. I mean, this would really get that thing up there, and it would be at the very top of the list. It's already at number 5, and it'd be up there above, not above ETH, but it'd be up there near the top of the list here. So $32 EOS is their prediction going into July. But at the end of the day, hopefully you guys aren't making your decisions based on people's tweets. I just make my decisions based on the charts and based on what I'm looking at here, and make some wise investment decisions based on my own personal opinions and the information I have available to me, and not based on a single tweet. But it's always fun to see kind of these wild predictions thrown out there, and we've seen them both on the upside and the downside here recently with this pullback. You're seeing the calls again for 3,000 Bitcoin and 1,800 Bitcoin and sub 6K, and well, we'll have to just wait and see. I still believe, personally, you guys know where I stand. I think the low was established here in April. I personally believe that's going to hold, but hey, anything can happen in this market, and I will go with what the market decides. Ultimately, I'm not going to be that hard-headed and fight it. So a couple of more charts to look at before we wrap up. So speaking of EOS, this chart actually looks pretty good here. It's had this pretty deep correction. If you look at the dollar pair, it's topped out around $22 and had a low in and around that upper $12 range. And here we are pulling in a little bit, and it's starting to break this downtrend a little bit. So one to pay attention to now. The volume on here today was pretty good. Got it back above the 10 EMA on the daily chart. So paying attention to EOS here. Nice little flag that formed here on this daily. Could be the start of a trend reversal. And so that's what I'm going to be paying attention to here. Still watching Binance coin versus the BTC pair. This one is still looking really nice. I was watching this setup here down at the lows while it was tightening up. Had that big breakout, and so far it's holding that breakout point here. It's holding the 10 EMA on the daily as well as that breakout point. We've tested it a couple of times. Now we're testing this near-term overhead resistance. A little bit of a double bottom forming on this daily chart. And so if it can start to close above that 17.5K, 18K level, then that's going to be confirmation to the upside. And at that point, I'm going to be looking out for some new highs on BNB versus BTC. It's not that far away, so it wouldn't take a whole lot of a move to get us there. I mean, at this point, you're talking another 7% or so to the upside. And once something reaches new highs, the momentum can really take off at that point because there's no overhead resistance. And at that point, a lot of the you start to see a little bit of more of a momentum move where more people are buying and pushing the price up higher. So I'm going to be watching for a Binance coin to start potentially outperforming here if Bitcoin can finally confirm that it's put in a near-term low. And finally, Ethereum here, one I was watching. This one was a very strong name versus BTC, was outperforming for quite some time here, and it looks like it's finally turning the corner here. So I would be cautious with ETH here. It's looking like it's wanting to pull in a little bit more. You can see it broke a very clear uptrend that it was in, very strong, holding that 10 EMA, and ever since it closed below, it's really started to struggle here. So I'm on a little bit higher alert here with ETH, just because it has outperformed Bitcoin for quite some time, and it looks like you're seeing a little bit of a retracement here. So a couple of levels to look on the downside if this continues lower. Just doing a straight Fibonacci retracement on this, you can see the 382 level is around that 0.074 level, which lines up with a little bit of a base we saw here before that big move on the way up. And then below that, you know, there's the next real big base was here in between there, would just kind of could be anywhere in between there. So just watching ETH there for another potential pullback. Like a lot of these names, I do expect to see a little bit of a bounce near term, but in the more intermediate term, I'm thinking this at best needs to pause up here and build a new base. So that's going to be it for today, guys. Just wanted to bring that update on the markets real quick. Again, to recap, the level to watch on Bitcoin near term, it's got to break above that 10 EMA on that 4 hour. It's really struggled here recently. So getting above 7,700 would be the first step. And then ultimately, I see a bounce into around that 79.8K level. And that's going to be the first real big resistance that we see on the way up. So that's going to be the level that I'm going to be watching out for here in the next day or two. And I will keep you guys posted. Thank you for watching. Remember to hit that subscribe button. Until next time, take care, everyone.